Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because chaos. Today we are talking about Karen Lord's Redemption in Indigo. So quick disclaimers before we start. I was gifted a copy of this book. Nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I'm also going to keep this as spoiler free as humanly possible. I actually don't think this is the kind of book you can really spoil, but maybe that's just me. However, if you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, obviously click away now. It's fine. I will also link the story graph for this book in case you want to check if there are any content warnings. The dog is maybe coming to say hello. Nope, she's going back to bed. Cool. This is going to be a little bit of a different one. Normally I script Overbooked videos, but I found that with this book I found it really hard to stick to that original structure and to pin everything down. So you're just going to get a bit of stream of consciousness, and I hope that's okay. And Editing Judith's going to edit this into something super coherent and wonderful. But I will try and vaguely stick to some sort of plan. I just don't know what I think about this book, and I want to pass that out live in front of a camera, though not live for you. So this originally came out in 2010. So it's getting on a little bit. We're 12 years in, and it is a retelling of a Senegalese folktale with a whole heap of other stuff rolled into it. There are lots of different ways you could describe this book. I think folklore, fairy tale, oral history, sit around the campfire, let me tell you this story, would be the shelf I would put it on, in the shelf that is just me trying to describe books. There are a lot of different shelves. This sits on one of them. Let me read you the blurb so you can get a gist of what's going on, because if I try and explain it with the energy I have right now, you'll never have any idea. Worth noting, I've never heard any of these names said out loud, and I couldn't easily access a recording of some of the names, so if I pronounce them wrong, I do apologise. Palmer's husband is a fool and a glutton. Bad enough that he followed her to her parents' home in the village of Makenda, now he's disgraced himself by murdering livestock and stealing corn. When Palmer leaves him for good, she attracts the attention of the Undying Ones, the Jombi, who present her with a gift, the Chaos Stick, which allows her to manipulate the subtle forces of the world. Unfortunately, not all the Jombi are happy about this gift. The Indigo Lord believes this power should be his and his alone, and he sets about trying to persuade Palmer to return the Chaos Stick. Bursting with humour and rich in fantastic detail, Redemption in Indigo is a clever, contemporary fairy tale from a dynamic new voice. Lord's world of spider tricksters and indigo immortals, inspired in part by a Senegalese folktale, is fresh, surprising, and utterly original. That's the broad strokes of the story. I think the story is actually in some ways more than that, and in some ways much simpler than that, in a really interesting way. And the best way I think I can describe how this book feels is that you are sat at a campfire around a dinner table, you are sat with people and someone is telling you a story. And I think that you have to really be on board for that to enjoy the reading experience of this book. And the first time that I read this book back in 2020, it was either 2020 or 2021, I can't quite remember. I don't think I was quite prepared for that, and I hadn't quite got myself into the right reading mindset for that, and I found this a little bit confusing, and I didn't really like the characters, and I was kind of like, oh no, it was fine, I'll probably unhaul it on my next unhaul. And then I realised that I needed to make this video, and I thought I would do a reread, and with that I really tried to frame it as, I think it really helped actually, that I knew Angela loved this, and I wanted to go into it with as open a mind as possible, even though I'd read it already once, and I was like, okay, I'm putting myself in a better situation, a less stressful situation than I was in last time, and I'm going to let this book happen, and I'm not going to try and focus too much in on different elements, I'm just going to let this story happen. And I think that works much better. And I think the way that the narrator in this story focuses in on really small details and then pulls out to the wider situation, you can feel the flow of a story through this that really feels very oral, as opposed to feeling like something that's been written down and structured and all of the above. It's not that it's not carefully written, and it's not that I think that it could only be experienced out loud, but the feel of this book is very different from a lot of other things that I have read. I also, again, examining why I didn't like it the first time and why I liked it a lot more this reread, I think I got very stuck on the aspect of the story that is retelling, and it features a character who I don't enjoy very much, and he's meant to be very horrible, is Palmer's original husband. He's meant to be not a pleasant man, and I was reading it and I was like, I don't like him and I don't want to spend any more time with him, and please stop making me read his story. And actually on a reread I realised that you don't actually have to spend that much time with him, and there are more important aspects of the story to focus on, and that was definitely a much better experience. So if you find the beginning of this book a bit of a struggle, as I did, I think that you will power through, you will still enjoy this. Because it does take a little while for things to slot together. And for me, it took 2 reads for me to really understand what the core elements of the story was and what the focus is. And I think that's partly because it's not really clear until you're at the end what you're meant to take from this story, and I expect multiple people take different things from it. But for me, I need a book to get to the end of a book and go, okay, right, this is this person's story, they're doing this thing, and this is how it's going to end up, and now I want to follow it through again. So in some ways, very glad that I own this, and I can now do that again and again and get more from it every time, which is an enjoyable experience for me. I think there's elements of this story that feel very similar to some other things I've read. Weirdly, I keep coming back to Neil Gaiman's American Gods and Anansi Boys. I don't actually think that's a very good example, because I did not like those books, but in terms of the gods speaking to mortals and that kind of folkloric sort of version of things, that's what it feels like to me, but done much better. I don't think I could argue that one. It's done much better. But other than that, I don't think I would ever have picked this up were it not for Angela's recommendation. And I don't think that this is something I've read anything super similar to. This feels very unique on my shelves, which is a good thing, because sometimes I do just want a little bit of a palate cleanser. It's still magical, it's still fairy tale and folklore, which is one of my favourite things, but it's not super white is probably the best way of saying that. But there is just a freshness and a uniqueness to this that I really appreciated, and it's made me want to go look into more Senegalese folklore and folktale and just see what else is in there, because there's a lot of things where I know characters from mythology because I ate up folklore and mythology books when I was a kid, so many of them, but always written from a very Western perspective, and it would be like 50 different Greek myths and then one from somewhere else. And I would like to do a bit of exploration and see where these kind of trickster characters, kind of Anansi characters, play out in different cultures. I think that would be really interesting, and I'm sure there are books about that, so maybe I'll be looking those up after this is done. I think for me this is a real testament to not always giving up on books, because I could have said, look, I didn't really like Redemption in Indigo, it wasn't for me, and even on this second read when I was really struggling with the first section, I could have gone like, no, I'm done, I'm not going to film a video, I'll find something else to fill that slot. And in the end, if I hadn't powered through, I wouldn't have had the enjoyment of the last half of this book. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of DNFing. If you're not enjoying something, you can DNF, but this, it's 280 pages. I could get to the end. I knew I could. And realising that I was fixating on this one element of the book that I wasn't enjoying, this character, and that wasn't what the book was about, right? I wasn't getting the enjoyment because I wasn't letting myself enjoy it. And it does make me wonder how many books in the past that I read at the wrong time, or that I read that I was just finding difficult. It wasn't actually that the book was bad, it was that I wasn't in the right place, or that the book started in a different place and then would have been really good at the end. It's made me much more open to some of the things on my shelves, I think, which is no bad thing, I suppose. That being said, I have read some things where I've powered through in the hope that it would get better and it never did. So maybe that's not a universal experience. Lounging now, because I've been allowed to blither because I didn't give myself any structure for this. Well, do you have any recommendations of other books inspired by folklore or collections of folklore that aren't super Western focused? I would love to read them. I would love to hear those recommendations, please, and thank you. Equally, have you read this? Do you have plans to? I'm really sorry that I cannot, in fact, link you to an Angela review, as she does not have a public review for this book, but I'm sure that it will be in some of her favourite books videos from a couple of years ago. I'm certain, because I've definitely seen her talk about this book. So that's someone who's a little bit more probably coherent talking about it. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. You can come hang out on Discord where we have a wonderful chill time talking about books. Nothing makes me feel more loved and appreciated than my patrons who put up with all of this waffle times like 10. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. I think that's everything. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. And why are you playing with my office chair?